ThursdAI for October 16. Can you believe it's middle of October already? Welcome everyone to ThursdAI. My name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with weights and biases from CoreWeave. And I'm adding to my stage my co-hosts Yam, Peleg, and Wolf from Raven Wolf. What's up, guys? Welcome to the middle of October. One day after the middle of October. It's been big AI month for sure. We have a lot to talk about, obviously. Don't remember a week where we didn't have a lot to talk about. I want to say welcome to you folks. Yam, what's the most important AI thing that you saw this week?
I'm waiting for Gemini 3. And I saw some mind-blowing demos, allegedly. Yeah, but not just a little bit of hype, like full operating system in a website.
Yes. Just
Still
for our
waiting.
listeners who are not following the same feeds that we do, there's this group of folks who allegedly get early access to models somehow through A/B testing, whatever. And this one guy kept posting one-shotted full operating system builds out. So like on the web, they built like the iOS one and Windows and Mac and whatever. And yeah, that does look impressive. I saw the iOS one. I have built one a long time ago when I was a web developer. I built a clone of iPad, and it took me like 3 months. So I really feel it if this is gonna be one shot. All right, Wolfram, how's your AI week? What got you excited this week?
Oh, there has been so much stuff going on. So of course the VEOs thing, the announcement of OpenAI to open up a bit more and become more open when they bring the adult mode or something like that. So a lot of stuff is happening, and I'm very excited. Didn't have chance to look into all of this, but yeah, it's a cool weekend. I'm looking forward to Gemini 3 the most.
Hey folks, Alex from the editing floor here. We had an incredible show today with 4 interviews with incredible people. We had an interview with Jessica Gallegos, senior product manager on the Google DeepMind team, all about VEO 3.1. We had finally the interview with Kyle Corbitt from OpenPipe, Weights and Biases about serverless RL and RL in general. It was a great interview in depth. You'll hear it at the second hour of the show. We then had Quinn Slack join us from AMP to talk about their new offering for AMP for free with ads. It's very interesting. And then finally, as breaking news, Cognition released SWE-grep. We had Swyx, our friend of the pod, jump in on the last part of the show to talk to us about how those speedups are possible. So very exciting show up in front of you. I hope you enjoy the rest of it. TLDR for October 16th. We'll start with open source as we usually do. No big, huge breakthroughs in state-of-the-art open source as far as I saw. There's one very important thing for us to talk about. We have a new bilingual model from KAIST, Korea Institute of Technology and IT. It's a bilingual Korean-English 10 billion parameter. It's called Chromo, with a nice paper as well. Our friends from Qwen added a new release for Qwen 3 VL, 2 small VLs, which is always appreciated, like 3 billion and 8 billion parameter VLs. And then we will have to absolutely cover the latest Google release in open source. It's Google's C2S scale. It's a 27 billion parameter Gemma model that apparently reached a novel scientific discovery. I'll say this slowly again because it's something that we've been all waiting for, something that Gary Marcus said is never going to be possible. A novel scientific discovery, cell to sentence scale 27B, is discovered breakthrough of how cancer cells behave, which is why Jan puts on the EI glasses right now. This is absolutely what we're looking forward to, and we'll definitely discuss what that means and how this works in the world where AI solves cancer. This is where we're going. So definitely worth the glasses moment. Alrighty, folks. This is all in open source. I think the biggest highlights for this week is the big world, big companies, LLMs and APIs. Claude, Haiku 4.5 was released. Shout out to Anthropic. Let's go. We love the Claude family, the biggest brother, the middle brother, Sana, that everybody loves, 4.5, and the Haiku 4.5. It's a fast, cheap model. I think it's like twice as fast as the previous one. So definitely, Nistan, would love to hear your thoughts about this. I saw you work with it already.
Let's do for later.
And then we'll move on to some OpenAI updates. There's a big thread that Sam Altman started where he talks about ChatGPT will start loosening restrictions and enable adult mode and potentially even Erotica, which, you know, in December, as close as December. This is following some news that they had a expert council on well-being and AI, and researchers from Harvard, Stanford, etc. So we'll cover both these news, but basically we definitely have been waiting for adult mode, all of us. Like, I'm pretty sure this is something that, we've talked about multiple times, how ChatGPT is maybe overly restrictive, and they have been promising us this adult mode that's by design. And I also absolutely want to cover the stuff we ended the show last week with from XAI and how they compare. We should definitely talk about what adult mode means and why it's important. They also updated memory management. Automatic memory management is in ChatGPT. And then this morning, Microsoft is announcing AI Copilot on the Windows 11. With every Windows 11 will be an AI PC right now. And this Copilot will be able to execute tasks for you. So kind of like comment the browser, but on a OS level. And that's new from like, an hour ago. I don't know if you guys already had a chance to see this because we jumped on the stream, but it looks cool. And it looks like Microsoft is absolutely gunning for folks to talk to their computer. They tried with Cortana a decade ago. It didn't really work. But
now it should work.
Yes, but hopefully, with AI, it's going to work. I also have an update for folks that due to our efforts, some things have got solved. So advanced voice mode, if you guys remember, we started talking about how advanced voice mode got really bad because it kept repeating the custom instructions. They were leaking into the context, and the advanced voice mode on OpenAI would just repeat everything you told it to. We raised this issue. Justin Umberti from OpenAI actually noticed and then got back to us with a fix. And so I tried advanced voice mode and I like it again. So if you were avoiding advanced voice mode because it was annoying you, they fixed it. So shout out to OpenAI for that. And then we're gonna go to hardware. We don't often cover hardware, but weeks like this, we should. Nistan, do you have the notes open in front of you? Do you want to cover the hardware TLDR super quick?
Yeah, NVIDIA released this device, which on its own, it is actually pretty impressive. Like, it's a low power device with 128 gigs of RAM, and it is optimized for 4-bit inference. It's the digits workstation. But because at the end of the day, watts are watts, and there's only so much efficiency that you can pull out of a chip. So if it is very low power and you've made sacrifices in terms of the amount of bandwidth, the LLM performance is going to suffer. This is a $4,000 128 gig GPU and CPU put together by NVIDIA, and it's tiny. It's like a Mac Mini, a bit larger. A lot of people feel like that should have cost like $1,000 or like $1,500 for what it was, because it performed a lot worse than what was advertised in terms of flops. Would I want one? I would probably buy it if it was like $1,500. But
okay, so just to get back to the TLDRness of this, NVIDIA's DGX Spark has launched. Jensen hand delivered this to Elon Musk and Sam Altman and like other folks as well. Those hand deliveries by Jensen, but the excitement aside, it looks like you could get more performance from an M3 Ultra, for example. Apple also announced a new thing in hardware, while we're in hardware, M5 chip, M5, not M5 Pro, not M5 Ultra or Max, whatever. So this M5 chip supposedly is like twice better for AI performance, but they didn't show any specific AI things. Listen, go ahead.
This one, even George Hotz commented on it, is they've put an accelerator inside each of the cores. And this first came out on the iPhone
yes.
chip, but that's a very good design. It might end up being a lot faster, even than, I think it might be a lot faster even than what they're advertising there. Yep. I think that might end up being a lot more than just 30%.
And so we're waiting for tests, but also we're waiting for the Pro and the Ultra versions of this, because this one I think goes only till what, 62?
32 gigs.
32 gigs of RAM. Yeah, we want more. But it's a great chip designed from Apple, and it's coming into MacBook Pro, iPad, and Vision Pro, by the way. All right, and the last thing in hardware is OpenAI and Broadcom set to deploy 10 gigawatts of custom AI accelerators. OpenAI is going to make their own chips with Broadcom. They announced this week. I think there was like rumors for a while, and now OpenAI is going to make their own chips, folks. We're going to move on to this week's buzz, where I'm going to update you about everything that happens in Weights and Biases Core Weave. So we have a new model on our inference. It's OpenPipe fine-tune of Qwen 3.14b. It's a instruct version, a fine-tune friendly instruct version of Qwen 3.14b, because the main release did not include an instruct non-thinking model. So the OpenPipe folks made it into a non-thinking model, great for fine-tuning. You can use this model on our inference service. We'll also hopefully finally chat with Kyle Corbitt about RL, and RL launched from OpenPipe, and just general excitement from Kyle. If you are in Europe somewhere, our fully connected event in London is coming up in 20 days, and that's a great way to meet Weights and Biases folks, some CoreWeave folks as well. This has been the hottest week since last week, actually, since 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
VEO 3.1, folks, it's finally here. It's a next-gen video model. It has cinematic updates, audio, and a bunch of other stuff. We're going to chat with Jessica, a senior product manager at Google DeepMind, about VEO 3.1, and that's going to come in like 25 minutes. So definitely stay around with us. We have, I think, around like 3 interviews here, which is great. We work really hard to bring you those people to tell you about those things. All right, now I have updated Sora Pro to give you up to 25-second generation with their new storyboard feature. It's very similar to how the storyboard works in Flow from Google. They've updated the default generations to everyone to 15 seconds on the default model. So I think from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, or 8 to 10. So that's impressive. And the quality there is not great. And I will definitely talk about this because I've tried both, and both are lacking the thing that we want. We're not quite there yet, but it's great. And then also I noticed that there's a new over 20-second video generation model from Baidu called Muse Streamer. I wasn't able to test it out because if any of our listeners have a Chinese phone hookup for me, I definitely need one. I feel like I'm restricted from the world of AI by not having a Chinese phone number, so I can't register to Baidu, to WeChat, like all these things. If anybody has a hookup for me, I would love to, because I need to test out all these things. But Baidu released Muse Streamer a while ago, I think in August, and now they have over 20-second generation without extensions. In VEO 3, apparently you can go up to 1 minute with extensions, so that's great.
That was a wild sentence. I'm restricted from AI because I don't have a Chinese phone. Just want to point that out.
That's true, man.
That's true.
I can't log into different things, and I really want to, and I don't have WeChat. All right, folks, we're almost at the end of the TLDR AI art and diffusion segment. We have a very interesting entry to the world of AI art and diffusion. There's a new top 1 image editing model like Nano Banana and Seedream. It's called Riverflow 1 from Sourceful, and it's topping the artificial analysis ELO rank over Nano Banana and Seedream and etc. It's really hard to use it. I wasn't able to find this. There's like one place that has this. I wasn't able to register. So it's very interesting that we have these models now that even I can get access to. So Sourceful folks, if you're listening, I want access to your Riverflow to test it out. I promise to be fair. And then also a very cool paper came out that I haven't seen stuff like this before. DIT 360 is a state-of-the-art panoramic image generation. It, like, unlike regular image generation, it generates panoramic 360 images. So that's super cool. And the paper is great. And I think last thing we have to cover, unless we have breaking news, is our friends from AMP have launched a free tier. And this free tier is powered by ads. This is a definitely new and interesting entry in the world of AI agents coding. I know many people are locked out from like Claude Maxes, whatever, students, etc. And AMP launched the free tier. So we're going to chat about them with Quinn at the end of the show. And I think it's time to hit open source because we have a bunch of interviews. Let's go to open source. Alrighty, so let's get going. Let's get started with open source, folks. Let's go. Open source AI, let's get it started. All right, let's get it started. With an instance prompt, we're going to go straight into Qwen 3, the smaller ones. We've talked about Qwen 3 VL quite a lot already. Qwen VL generally great models. They finally released the smaller ones. Right. So we have Qwen VL 4B and 8B, two small. Let me see if I can open this in the tab.
Okay, those benchmarks are kind of like really good.
Let's take a look. So we have Qwen. Let me just make sure that this is clear for folks who are watching. We're looking at the table released from Qwen full of benchmarks. And I don't know how many there are, but there's definitely more than 25 benchmarks. Qwen is crazy testing their models. I don't know of many other labs that do as many tests on their models and other models for comparison as Qwen. Because they have stuff like, and this is a visual model, so they have general understanding, but also like a lot of visual stuff. So they have Hallusion Bench, and then they have MIA Bench, MMStar, Real World QA, Math Vision, MMMU Pro, and Full. They have a lot of benchmarks, and they compare most of them to the 72 billion parameter Qwen 2.5. And I just, comparing the tiny models of this generation to the main big model from last generation, or Quinn 2.5, and seeing that the 4 billion parameter, 8 billion parameter matches 72 billion in the span of 6 months. When was 2.5 released? Maybe 7-8 months. It's never going to be not incredible.
That was a very good model. I used that for a bunch of medical stuff. That was a very good model too. It's hard to run, but yeah.
We have some examples. Quinn 3 VL 8 billion parameter, the smaller one. It looks like it's beating GPT-5 Nano, the smallest one, on pretty much all benchmark that I can see here. On stuff like real world QA, you get 71 versus 60. On MMU and Pro, 55 versus 36. This tiny model outscores GPT-5 Nano if you need that vision kind of part. It's incredible. Now, as we hype up smaller models for general intelligence, you would like different models for general intelligence. This is definitely not going to answer questions in the way that the bigger models answer. But for vision stuff, those models are very impressive.
I did a small talk, a small workshop a few months ago here, where I just showed like vibe coding with a 4B model, and I used like the previous 4B Quinn and stuff. It needs a lot of work, but it's weird that it can, and we're just taking the tech for granted now. I think the bigger deal with this is it understanding video, because you want like the smallest, fastest smart model you can for video, just because of how heavy it is otherwise.
Yeah.
And it's Apache too. So yeah. I think this is like the on-device model, right?
Yep. 8 billion, and OS World is the one that we're looking at for agentic stuff, right? If you want the model to do computer use, we're looking at ScreenSpot 33.9 score on OS World for the 8 billion parameter model. Means it's like an agentic thing that can click buttons. And we're going to talk about clicking buttons in the Microsoft segment, because Microsoft Copilot now does this supposedly, but like 33% of OS World is really high. They compare it to the previous Quinn VL, 72 billion parameter had only 8%. So a significant jump in OS World. It looks like they just added a bunch of training data specifically for clicking buttons. Yeah, this is a great model. We have breaking news in a second. Thank you for our listeners who bring us breaking news. All right, anything else about Quinn? Folks, the Apache 2, it's available on Hugging Face. And shout out to the Quinn team for these releases.
Just for comparison, Sonnet 4 on OS World, which is everyone was using it for that was only getting 41%. So it's pretty up there for an on-device.
Sonnet 4 is 41%, and Quinn 3VL 8 billion parameter is 33% on OS World.
4.5 jumped a lot, but that's
all right. Yeah.
Sonnet 3.7 at 35. So you already got basically a Sonnet 3.7 capable on device one for
agentic use. Runs like much faster on your local GPU, because it's like only 8 billion parameters. All right, and then the next thing that we have to chat about is Google's C2S. Do you guys see this? Google released an update about cell to sentence, a model called cell to sentence scale, 27 billion parameter. I think this was a huge deal to not be missed, and we want to bring this huge deal to you. So basically, as far as I understood, it's a Google and Yale collaboration based on Gemma, the open series of models from Google and DeepMind. They hit a breakthrough in generating a new hypothesis, a novel scientific discovery hypothesis. This is what we're waiting for. This is what Gary Marcus said that's never going to happen. This is what like David Deutsch says that's never going to happen. This is the type of stuff that the people who assume that LLMs are stochastic parrots repeating what they read will never be able to achieve. And now I think it's one of the first signs of let's fucking go type AI, where AI hypothesizes something it never seen before, nobody suggested before, and scientists validate it experimentally in living cells, and it turns out to be true. So in this case, it's a specific thing, because this model, 27B open model, was able to accelerate drug discovery for cancer treatment, and it's a novel hypothesis about cancer cell behavior that nobody previously documented. They use Gemma open weights. Let's read about this. Like, I think it's worth like stopping for this for just a second, I think, because it feels to me like a big moment. Meanwhile, folks on stage, have you read about this already? Have you looked into it?
Check the summary, and they released this model and the resources as open source. Just why we are covering it here, and that has to be applauded, because this is very beneficial for humanity. And releasing it instead of just trying to make money out of it, yeah, big kudos.
100%. You had a comment as well, Nissan?
Yeah,
I'm looking.
I mean,
I was trying to see how exactly. Yeah, I think this is worth doing like a paper reading and stuff for. We're seeing more and more because I've noticed before when they study the cancer cells, apparently like they take a picture with a spectrogram type of thing, and then they would train a vision model and then combine that with an LLM to be able to just look at the dots of this spectrogram from a cell. And then from that, they were able to train a model and do something. It just felt to me that when I saw those before, they were all done with very small models by like really broke grad students with very old GPUs, and they were still like getting all this like major stuff done. So there's a lot more to do here to apply the combination where you have the data, you train it, you use a bigger model, and you're able to do basically computational biology at scale and pick up patterns that you wouldn't normally pick up. Yeah, we're going to see more.
100%. This is only the start. We had our friend Dr. Daria Umuntaz, I want to say is the right way to pronounce his last name. He's an immunologist and he's all, EAC as much as possible. And he's been on the show a couple times. And he's saying, we're going to solve cancer. AI is going to solve cancer. And, this is not solving cancer, what we're seeing right now, but it's a first kind of sign of what is potentially coming. The quote that I found from the blog, I want to read it out. The result also provides a blueprint for new kind of biological discovery. It demonstrates that by following the scaling laws and building larger models like C2S Scale 27b, we can create predictive models of cellular behavior that are powerful enough to run high-throughput virtual screens, discover context-conditioned biology, and generate biologically grounded hypotheses. Context-conditioned biology, I think, is the word here. I think this is kind of what humans lack in expertise, and it looks like with bigger models that's going to come more to fruition. So I'm very, very excited about this one. And it's open source, like Wolfram, like you said, so it greatly helps that folks can validate those results. And then not everybody has the lab. I think it's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. So shout out to Google folks for releasing this and Yale folks for getting to a point where we're getting novel discoveries. Yeah, go ahead.
Look at the size of this thing. Like you're doing this with a 27B model. It just goes to show that if you train those things on, I don't think it could even be called fine-tuning because there's some free training here. That if you train such a model on only one thing and not trying to build a general model, you can get pretty incredible results with a 27B size model. You can run this at home. No, seriously, you can run this at home on a single GPU for inference. And it's like solving cancer at the same time. Don't you think that's crazy?
That's insane. That's absolutely insane.
Super interesting thing is that basically it's an LLM for the language of individual biological cells instead of human language. So that is, wow. You can use LLMs for so many things that can be interpreted like a language. Amazing.
Apparently, they took the scRNA sequence profiles and they turned those into sentences, and then they just ran the RL stuff on whether it replied with the right RNA sequence of the cell. So it's like they just use the same RL text techniques, but instead of feeding full sentences, they just felt like long strings of the DNA or RNA.
I see that they have all the 3 stages of pre-training, SFT, and RL. I'm in no way, shape, or form real biologist, nor do I understand the complexity of the task itself. But just technically, I mean, do you know, from your knowledge, how much data are we talking about? How long did they train this? Because that's surprising. I mean, yeah, I get the idea. You can interpret anything as text, and you can just cram everything into the model. Well, you get incredible results, but how much data are we talking about? Let's say that I want to apply this to a different domain.
I found is that it is over 57 million cells, and that was more than 1 billion tokens of cell sentences that they converted it to.
Oh, that's not bad then.
Biomedical text and metadata.
So I wanna cover this like last thing before we move on. The scale is important here. They said this required a level of conditional reasoning that appeared to be an emergent capability of scale. I just like those 3 words. I like absolutely the ethos for everything and the reason for us to put the let's go sunglasses for sure.
Is all you need.
Appeared to be an emergent capability of scale. Scale leads to emergent capabilities, novel things are happening. So incredible work on C2S scale from Google. Scale is in the name of this model, so very, very much incredible. Alrighty, folks, for folks who are interested, scientists, etc., we will add the links to the model here. They have a bio archive, which is like a biological version of the regular archive. Full scientific preprint. If you're into this, definitely go check it out. Or also on Hugging Face. That's great, folks. We're moving on because we have an exciting interview for you right now. We're moving on to vision and video, which is very, very hot for this week. And for this, we have a special guest that wasn't here on the show before. So we're gonna welcome Jessica. Welcome, Jessica, to the show. You're product manager at DeepMind. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. Please feel free to tell folks a bit about who you are, what you're working on, before we're going to get to the actual exciting features that you guys released.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Jessica Gallegos. I'm a product manager in DeepMind. I focus on our editing and control side of the house. I also work a lot on some of our external engagements with filmmakers in the creative community. I was part of the launch that we announced earlier this week, so excited to be here joining you.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining. I think maybe one of the first things I'll say, there was so much speculation before you guys officially announced VEO 3.1 specifically about it already being there, about supposed features. And I was waiting for an official announcement for a while. And then when it came, it was very interesting to see how far the speculation went and how much hype the model is getting. And then we got a significant upgrade to VEO, only a 0.1 from you guys, so not like VEO 3.5, the 0.1. Could you walk us through the main differences from a person that works there and not some things that people invented? What changed? What is new in VEO 3.1?
Yeah, thank you so much for also addressing that. There was a lot of hype ahead of the launch. But yeah, this is an update that we were very excited to bring. As you mentioned, it's not a brand new model upgrade. It is not a VEO 4. We're talking about a 0.1 improvement to what we announced back in May. The main areas where we drove improvements were on better prompt adherence and specifically better quality on our image to video. That would be for the base model. And then, of course, what is most exciting for me is bringing a lot of new creative control through capabilities. So we took some of our existing controls from the May launch and added the audio component, which had been a big request from the community, especially the creative community. So that would be for scene extension. So that allows you to condition on the last second of your previous scene and extend. We also have first and last frame. That one is really exciting. It really gives you a lot of creative control, being able to provide the first frame that you want on your video, the last one, and then using a prompt to guide what the transition looks like. We also added audio to ingredients to video. If you're not familiar with it, allows you to bring in characters, objects, scenes, and combine them as you would combine ingredients. And it gives you amazing control in terms of timing and how those ingredients combine in the video. And now we support audio, which we're very excited about. So that would be on generation control. We also added 2 new improvements to editing within an existing video. I think this is pretty exciting. We brought in object insertion as well as object removal, which are about control within an existing scene. So I think it can really open up a lot of new possibilities for creatives. So that's a recap of what we announced this week.
That's first of all, thank you so much for the official. This is what we launched, folks. Please make sure that don't get too, I would say, disappointed maybe, because people do look at some pre-releases like, oh yeah, it's gonna be this, and then they meet reality and that's not what they have. But you guys launched a lot of stuff. So one of the things that definitely I want to talk to you about, extension. You mentioned that extending a video, which was a feature at Flow, which is the main interface for many folks, extending a video previously was possible with the last frame. You can you make this last frame an asset and then you kind of generate from this last frame. That obviously wasn't enough for many folks. The main issue for me back then was audio. Like I would generate my own face, for example, and I would get some very funny, very American accentized person talking instead of me. And then the next extension based on last frame would just be a completely different voice, a completely different behavior, etc. So is video now a conditioning? So that the video can extend videos? Is that how that's done?
So the extension feature allows you to extend any clip. What we are looking at, though, what the information that the model is receiving and conditioning on is based on the last second of that video frame that you give it. So whatever visual and audio information is present in that last frame is what would be taken on to the rest of the extension. So it's really useful for things like, for example, if you wanted to continue ambient noise, if you wanted to continue things like audio and voice, then you need to make sure that the audio is present in that last second that you're conditioning on, but it also works pretty well if the data is present.
Amazing. The second thing that connects to this as well, you mentioned the ingredients, which I loved. The features were only like VEO 2 for a while, and then we had to catch up. These are absolutely marvelous, folks. Ingredients to video lets you add multiple things and then generate one video with these multiple things. So you can add an image of this jacket, for example, and then an image of me. This is how I generated this video. This jacket, I think, comes standard with the presets of VEO. And then the model will take those into account. Jessica, so you said that audio is now part of this, so I can upload my voice and will generate it within my voice. Is that what we're talking about here?
So to be clear, we're not using audio as a conditioning, but the output will have audio integrated. We think of this capability as very useful for when you're trying, for example, to compose a scene and the amount of detail that it can really take in. Like you could, as you mentioned, like not just reference a person, but you could reference very specific outfits, very specific accessories that you want to be present. You can, another really interesting use case for this one is you can have multiple characters, and with the prompt, you can even bring them in at different moments during the generation, which I think is really exciting for storytelling. It's like a step change difference from what you would be able to do with image to video, where you really have to stick to whatever's on that first frame. Here, you can really creatively bring in ingredients at different moments. For now, we're not yet supporting the audio conditioning as part of the ingredients that you're bringing in, but we're continuing to build this capability, and I think it does open a lot of creative possibilities.
So, I invited you to tell us about updates, not about feedback, but one thing that I absolutely saw from the community is I want myself in there. This is like where I want to go. Myself with the picture of myself, that's great, but then voice is a big component of this, and so this conditioning, once it counts, that's be great. But the extension feature, I absolutely noticed this, and I wanted to commend you guys and whoever worked on this. Because of the last second extension, folks, now when you create longer videos, the same character speaks with the same voice. I think it's very, very important, because before this, you'll have to go and send it to like a different lip sync model to dub, etc. And for creators, that just added a significant pain. So as you heard from Jessica, if the last second of your video segment includes the voice, it will continue speaking with the same. So that's incredible. Let's talk about the remix, whatever you call this, the remix feature or like the edit feature. That's also fairly novel and new, right? Before this wasn't necessarily that possible. Could you talk about this?
Yeah, and just to clarify, are we talking about the insertion and removal feature?
Insertion and removal, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I am really excited about this feature because I think it will really reduce the iteration that is needed to get the shot that you want. Like sometimes you generate something and there's like a specific detail that's missing or something that's extra. It also doesn't only work on generated content. You could also have a video that you recorded of yourself, for example, where you had someone cross in the background while you were giving an interview, and then that totally ruined your shot. So now all of these things can be generative. And I think what I'm really proud of with this release is the quality, because you're not just adding an object, but you're adding it realistically in a way that fits the scene. So we take care of things like shadows, we take care of things like occlusion. Same thing when you're removing the object, we make sure that it feels natural and sticks to the scene composition. So actually, a short backstory on this capability is we announced back at I/O our partnership with Darren Aronofsky and his production group, Primordial Soup. And one of the ways in which we actually built this capability was working with them. We were trying to put together a shot for a live action film where they needed to have a baby. And I don't know how much folks know about filming babies, but it's very delicate and there's a lot of ethics around it. And it's also very difficult just from like being able to get the right shot. And, you can't really like direct a baby to act. And so this capability actually allowed us to get that perfect shot. We actually have a blog post about it. I encourage you all to take a look at it, but it allowed us to insert this virtual baby into the shot and really capture the vision of that director. So that's an example of a really complex, and again, it was for an actual film. So it really needed to get the lighting right. It needed to fit with the rest of the acting on the scene, the shadows, and really make it feel natural. So I think that one for me was like a magical moment of like, wow, this could really change some of how we're doing things or even expand the creative possibility of what's possible today.
I think absolutely for creatives in an actual production, these capabilities are getting more and more in line with what they expect and what their viewers expect with this quality. But also, we should absolutely acknowledge how much power this gives to just regular schmoes, just as me trying to
Absolutely.
do some stuff. It's incredible with how much cinematic things I can achieve. And I think the sound was enhanced as well. Some cinematic motion was enhanced as well in VEO 3.1. So for 0.1, this is like a very, very impressive release. Last thing, maybe I'll ask you feature-wise, is first and last frame interpolation. I think it existed there before, but now it's a little bit better. And I think Nano Banana is involved somehow.
Yeah, for sure. So first and last frame, again, allows you to condition the first and the last frame of your video, and then you can guide with a prompt what happens in the transition. The key upgrade here, again, is that we're bringing audio to those transitions, and also the better prompt adherence is also impacting all of these capabilities. So we're also being able to stay closer to the user's intent. The reason I was bringing up Nano Banana, if you are familiar with it, so that's our image editing model, is once you combine these two features, you really have like a power tool, right? Because you could really take any starting scene, edit it with Nano Banana to turn it into whatever you want the ending scene to be, and then use VEO to guide that transition. And so I think we've been able to see some of our creatives do really amazing things when combining the two models for this feature.
One of the things that I saw that works really well with this is taking an object and then using Nano Banana to have like an exploded version of this object with like the pieces flying everywhere, and then like VEO interpolates this, or the IKEA boxes explosions that like was hypey for a while there. That like somebody would like bring a box and then it would explode with furniture all over the place. And so model interpolates, and sound is now part of this as well. So generally incredible release. One thing that was kind of hyped but didn't really get officially, we didn't get an update on length. Is that correct? Could you clarify the length things? I think we could extend, but the default length generation is still the same, 8 seconds.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, so 8 seconds, but then extension I think works way better. So I think this is one example from our own Nistan getting raccoons to talk about some stuff.
Well, it got the raccoon face perfectly. Like I wanted that exact raccoon. I didn't want other ones, so I recognized it.
All right, with that, Jessica, thanks so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Folks, VEO 3 reactions besides Nistan's, your thing is like super, like the raccoon looks sick.
Yeah, the audio, Sora just kind of has blown away the audio benchmark. It's like, but it's not like it's bad. The audio is good enough.
It's good.
Control, that they now have so many options to upload multiple images, give it references, the prompt adherence is better. So yeah, it unlocks a new capability similar to language models. And I think now that is great that they are focusing on this, giving you more control, extending videos and so on. So I will play a lot with this.
Yeah, 100%. We do have a second, like a little bit of breaking news. The breaking news that we now have is we have World Labs releasing a new thing called RTFM, real-time frame model. Did you guys see this already? Do you have the chance to go take a look? For limited time, you can try a live demo of RTFM yourself, hosted on cloud GPUs, blah, blah, blah. This is RTFM from World Labs. We talked to you about World Labs and their like world models, etc. Real-time frame model. A highly efficient world model generates video frames in real time as you interact with it, powered by a single H100 GPU. RTFM renders persistent and 3D consistent worlds, both real and imaginary. What? Let's go. Let's take a look. So we're seeing, what are we seeing? We're seeing there's a button here that says what am I seeing, but there's a world here that we are connected to, and we can move around this world. We can move forward, and this is unlike the previous thing the World Labs does. This is like live rendered things. Is that what we're seeing here? Let's take another one. Okay, we're clicking the picture for folks who are just listening. It's called Frame Boy. We'll click the picture that has like some reflections.
Very good name. Very good name.
Frame Boy, like Game Boy. Yeah. Frame Boy. And then there's reflections in the ground, there's some water leaking, and we're like in this bathtub thing. And usually these real-time diffusion models, they lose coherence on the objects that are in the scene, but this one seems, let me turn around all the way 360 and see if the bathtub is still there. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, that's very impressive, folks. It's a small window, so we don't get like a full window. Oh, okay. There's a toggle for quality and speed. So quality is higher, but like a little bit less of a refresh rate, but still it's like fairly real time. But if we remove and hit speed, we can see that this generates as much as the rotate.
Side? What if you go through the window to the outside?
Yeah, let's go see. For now, I cannot move there. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it's limited in how much you can move.
Yeah, I think there's like a little circle that I can move within. So I can turn around and look and then move a little bit forward and backwards. So folks, compared to the previous World Labs thing that we saw, this is like an interactive, real live kind of like diffusion thing that happens on the fly. Let's go and look at this library thing. Okay, we have this table, we have this chair. We can move to this chair. The consistency of the objects in there is very impressive. Not quite Genie 3 level impressive, but again, we haven't played with Genie 3 and it's not real time, I believe. This feels like real time. So shout out to World Labs on this release. It's called, what is it called? RTFM. Generative world models will inevitably be computationally demanding, potentially scaling beyond even the requirements of today's LLMs. We believe a crucial research direction to explore the future of rendering. RTFM does not build an explicit 2D representation of the world. So again, the thing that we saw from World Labs before is it builds a 3D world for you. The pre-generation step generates a 3D world, and then you walk in a 3D scene. This is similar to Descartes and some other folks, where you stream pixels and they're generated on the fly all the time. And so instead, it takes over one or more 2D images. The input directly generates a new 2D image of the same scene from different points of view, and it's basically a renderer, a learned renderer. Autoregressive diffusion transformer. Diffusion transformer did trained end-to-end on large-scale video data. This is very impressive from them. Like, I know they went to a different direction with the previous release, but this is very similar to Descartes and other stuff. Great breaking news. Comments on this, folks? Are we walking into a simulation anytime soon with this?
I tried to walk through the mirror. It wouldn't let me, so I think it knows the world pretty well. That's where it's going. Is the whole UI and stuff just going to be built for you on the fly?
Yep. I'm excited to see this in virtual environment as well. I want to talk about continuation of video. So we just talked about Sora. We just talked about RTFM from World Labs, which I probably will add to 3D as well. World Labs 3D. Well, the thing that I want to mention is that after VEO 3.1, or because of it, or maybe not because of it, Sora also had an update. A fairly significant update as well. So here's the update from Sora. Everybody can now generate up to 15 seconds, up from the default 8 or 10 seconds. 15 seconds videos are generated in Sora, obviously with cameras, etc. For Sora Pro, though, they've extended the video generation up to 25 seconds. And the way to do this is on the web. You now have Sora Pro. You have this like new storyboard feature. New to Sora 2, has been there in the previous Sora. You can describe scenes and you can allocate this time to these scenes, right? So like scene 1, Altrain's dancing. Scene 2, Altrain's sitting like falling behind. As you can see, I'm tagging my name is because cameras work. Although they don't show up as cameos, like, when you generate with Sora, usually you tag someone, it shows you their avatar. So cameras work here. I discovered not that great, but they do work. Falls down. But then you have this button here, 10 seconds, and then you can go all the way up to 25 seconds. I will say, from my experience, my examples, the coherence of the last frames is really, really bad. Okay, so I'm going to show you this cinematic movie that I did. It starts really good. It starts really good with the pixel frames. The text is really garbage. This is Sora Pro. And then the longer it goes, the worse it gets. And the one thing I want to focus on is like, okay, this shot is great. You can see my hair, you can see eyes, whatever. And then now it starts to be very weird, like the cowboy wobbles in a weird thing. But then look at this face. This is just like, I don't know what this is. It's all getting worse progressively. And I wonder if this is the limitation of just like video models going over certain minutes, or just the way they built the extension feature. I don't know. So the summary is Sora 15 seconds by default, 25 seconds for pro users, and a new scene builder that you can use to build out scenes, and an AI helper for you to help you with scenes. Anybody of you folks use Sora after we gave out codes and everything? Did you guys give up on it? Did the excitement pass? Where are we with Sora?
I've been having fun with it over the past few days. I've been sometimes even hitting my 30 video a day limit. A video I generated yesterday, for example, was a Shiba Inu in a fighter jet getting pulled over by the police on the highway, and then it takes off using the highway to take off as a runway.
Nice.
Like things like that.
I've been fooling many of my non-AI friends who don't know that I have a podcast. I generated this overflow from Vegas where I put myself on in the ThursdAI ad, and I said, I took out a little ad, and people commented on this as though this is real. I was like, folks, we don't have that kind of budget on ThursdAI yet to take out the globe in Vegas yet. We're going to get there.
I would have loved to get more into Sora, but I even got an iPhone from a friend, and you need a US account. So I couldn't create my own Cameo, so only a few Amy videos on Sora for me now.
Well, hopefully it will get there soon, but I think VEO is something that you have. Moving forward we should talk about big companies. I think it's time for the main updates as well. Let's talk about Haiku. Listen, I want you to announce the Haiku news if you don't mind, and let's talk about this.
So Haiku 3, had not been updated for a while. And this update is something completely different. Maybe we were expecting some kind of small, tiny model to just do things here and there or parse data. But when we tried it, I didn't even look at the benchmarks. I just set it in the workflow that I have. And honestly, I like it better than Sonnet 4.5.
Just to be very clear for folks who are listening now, we're talking about Haiku 4.5 that was released by Anthropic just a few days ago.
The price, or
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, this just came out yesterday as a model, finally an update. It was extremely fast. It wrote very, very good reports. But the most important thing, which I liked a lot better than Sonnet, is it did not have bad opinions. And Gemini is the worst on this. It just sounds like a Redditor that is just completely wrong when it comes to things and tries to lecture you on how the app should be. It chooses not to do stuff. Haiku just obeyed to do the job. I told it, look through 16 pictures of the app and then take screenshots for each one of those 16 design pictures. And then it went and it actually did that job exactly as I asked. And I told it, do not ask me any questions or make any statements until the work is done. And it was going very, very fast and it was going for like an hour, and it actually did the work as I asked. When I asked it to edit and change the styling, the output, it was like, you still need Sonnet or Opus for that. But overall, extremely impressed. I use this model a lot. I'm just surprised at how surprisingly good it is. Again, I think they just made it for agentic workloads. This is trained just to be an agent, I think.
Yeah. So SWE-bench verified for this model is, again, Haiku 4.5. It's like a very, very cheap, tiny model. We should talk about the price as well. 73.3% on SWE-bench verified. Folks, remember when we talked about SWE-bench getting like 25%? We were like, oh, 25%. This is the new soda. Jesus Christ. This is a tiny, super fast model getting 73%. Anthropic absolutely tops the whole top line of SWE-bench, looks like. 73.3% is close to 74 for GPT-5 Codex. It's more than GPT-5 and way more than Gemini 2.5 Pro. So, we're waiting for Gemini 3, but still people are connected to 2.5 Pro. It's 3 times cheaper per token than Sonnet 4. Not 4.5, but Sonnet 4. It's twice as fast as previous Claude models, and then optimized for reasoning. Like we said, this is a drop-in replacement for Haiku 3.5 and Sonnet 4 on major use cases. So if you use Sonnet 4 before, not 4.5, if you use Haiku 3.5 still, this is a drop-in replacement. Now, the thing that we want a comparison to, and we don't get often, is kind of like other models. So I think the comparison to something like a Grok 4 Fast, for example, which I think is still cheaper, is something that people should do for themselves.
I started the Eric Ventures
Repo bench.
The Repo benchmark. I see some people only got like 50. It was lower than Quintricoder, a bit higher than DeepSeek. That didn't feel like that when I was using it. But again, I've only used it agentically, where I just gave it a big list of tasks for it to do them. So I'm going to run that bench and it'll be done in like 20 minutes or so, I think.
Nice.
Have some not so positive feedback about Haiku.
Yeah, please.
Because they compared it to Sonnet 4, and I've been using Sonnet 4 a lot before. And I gave it just one prompt in German, and the German of this model is much worse than the older Sonnet one. It's a Haiku after all. Haiku has always been very bad in other languages.
Yeah.
And this is still true. So don't expect the same quality that the benchmarks show if you are using a different language. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yep, Haiku 4.5 drop-in replacement 3 times as cheap compared to other fast, quick models. It's really fast, not great if you use multimodal. So they do have sacrifices, but significantly boost on OS world. Let's move to talk about this, and this is more of a conversation than an announcement. The announcement there is that Sam Altman posted on his feed that OpenAI, as promised, will release a check mark for an adult mode and supposedly treat people like adults if they want to. This includes their period of strict restrictions for preventing folks with mental health risks and different things, mitigation that they took in OpenAI to make sure that ChatGPT doesn't lead people to horrible outcomes. They are announcing that in December they will roll out more customizable personalities, which is something that people missed from 4.0, and optional access to adult mode, potentially generating things like Erotica or soft Erotica, which blew the internet up completely. People started thinking like, okay, here we go, we're done, nobody's gonna leave their house, etc. Sam Altman actually addressed this with another tweet and said like, the reason why we're doing this, and like here's the reason for some of this. We've seen those requests. Obviously people want to talk to ChatGPT in a less restrictive way. I feel fairly okay with making sure that I'm not going to one-shotted by ChatGPT into insanity. I want it to talk to me the way I talk to Wolfram or Yam. We should be able to cover topics that are not deemed sensitive by somebody else, because this is how we want our AI to be. Other AIs, open source, definitely have less of those restrictions, especially after some fine-tuning. And we want the powerful models to also be and have this. Basically, the equivalent of ChatGPT right now assumes that everybody that watches a movie is PG-13 restricted. And so even the adults in the room are only limited to interacting with PG-13 type chats. OpenAI is basically releasing a rating system where there's like the 18 plus whatever that you can R-rated chats that you can decide to opt into. Wolfram, your thoughts on this?
I probably already have that mode unlocked because if you know prompting, you can get this anytime with all the models, even the big online models. So it won't change anything. But I guess it's more about how customizable it is for the people. I'm not sure what people are doing with these models, but if health issues are really a topic, then I understand that they need some safeguards so adults can do stuff that teenagers, for example, couldn't. In general, I like this, and I have noticed that they have relaxed their restrictions in the models already. So over the past months, even. So personally, I see no censorship anymore in there. Nothing that has been there before. But I think XAI has shown the way with being more open about this. Treat adults as adults. I think that is a big and important concept. We are paying for this, and as long as you are not breaking laws, doing anything illegal, or it's really, really detrimental to your health, you should be free to do whatever you want.
The one thing that is a caveat for some folks with this, OpenAI does go into adult verification in order to do this. Like for some of these safety controls that you will have to opt into, they will ask for your government ID to make sure that you're an adult to connect to your account. And that like triggers some people incorrectly. I don't care because I already have via the API had to verify myself to use some of the image generation via API. When they launch Sora also, they launch parental controls when they know that Sora is going to be used by teenagers, but then their parents would be able to like restrict them for specific things. So it looks like OpenAI is definitely going towards, let's make sure that, you know, teenagers are not getting one-shotted by AI with some safety controls. And also, together with this, they announced an 8-member expert council on well-being and AI, including top researchers from Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, to talk about like mental health risks in talking to these models, like because people use ChatGPT as their emotional support help. And so we don't want the AI to go crazy and tell them to do some stuff or to not seek support when they need, etc. So there's going to be a council on this. I don't know how much this council is going to be deciding, but those efforts are intertwined to get us more human-like emoji-rich AI that can do some stuff. One call out there is Sam Altman specifically said, we're not usage maxing, which means they're not building these models to have your eyes on them as much as possible. And I think the line that I want to draw is many folks reached out to me after last week's episode, where in the end we finished with, at least I did, share my thoughts about any engagement features from XAI Grok, where you have to talk to Ani every week to unlock a new, potentially scampy outfit. And I was really, really against this because that's engagement maxing, that's usage maxing, like asking a user to come in order to receive some like specific, you know, outfit for your anime character that is supposedly your step into parasocial relationships. That to me, building something like this into the app, into the features felt, it's really great to see that, you know, OpenAI addressed that as something they explicitly are not doing. So, you know, those are two different things. Take it as you will. Which type of AI would you want? But I think opting in versus opting out, I think, is very, very important distinction. Anything else on this, on the policy update? Yamal, DJ, I haven't heard from you in a while on this. Any thoughts on where OpenAI is going with this and how they're treating the new GPT release?
They did say, I remember a while back, I think it was even, I want to say December 2024, when he had this thread about what do you guys want in 2025? And then he gave a summary of, okay, this is what it looks like people want in 2025. And one of the things there was treating adults more like adults and allowing them to do more adult things. And he's made some comments on AMAs and other places about wanting to eventually treat adults more like adults. So I think this is just inevitable. And a lot of people are treating this as if it's just some sudden rash decision that OpenAI is erratically doing for revenue, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
I think as of last year or 2 years ago, the company that was making the most money in AI, I think was Replica. So this was the most profit generating side of the project. I think it's both. Like he does want to treat adults as adults, but also he doesn't want to lose market share to Grok in the,
in the more open type models that people actually interact with. I think some of them talked about this as well. When they introduced 5, the amount of outrage towards removing older models like 4.0 with specific personality capabilities that people really loved was huge. People were like really mourning the passing of 4.0 as though it's like their friend passed. I think OpenAI definitely should contend with the fact that people are treating these models as something that's part of them and they want specific things. And when they replace the model with another version, it kind of does feel like they're replacing a friend with a different friend. So for many people, this is now the reality, and being able to get back to that level of personality in open models, I think, is important for some folks. Folks, let's move on to talk about Microsoft is making every Windows 11 in the IPC. Did you guys see this super quick? Basically, the interesting thing is they're adding a new Agentic Copilot feature. We'll take a task and complete it in a separate desktop environment, and you can watch it while it works. So very similar to how Comet works, but let's take a look. Basically, you'll have, this is built into Windows, and you can upload a bunch of files for it, like JPEGs, etc. And then they will have this, this is actually a very interesting approach. They will have a Windows environment that's like standalone. As you can see, it launches like a mini Windows in there, and they execute the stuff in that like closed environment that you can watch and supposedly protect it from using different apps that it doesn't need. It runs a browser in there, I believe, but it also runs the Explorer with files. It goes and finds files, and it launches mail and sends a mail to somebody. I'm just like narrating the video that we're watching. This is built into Windows, folks. So like this is like, we've talked about AI being built into Windows. Will folks use this versus typing it themselves? I don't know, but you can take control. Like it's very similar to how Comet operates, but on the Windows operating system level. Folks, will people use agentic use on an OS level, and what are the benefits for
I've been waiting for this because I'm a Windows user. I think any of the OS makers can make an agent that works with you alongside you. Copilot is a great term for that because we all know the screen viewing agent that can give you context and input. If you have an agent, it is risky because it could mess up your computer and you can't do anything else while it is working. So having it as a second user, basically, that you can outsource some stuff to while it works in the background, that is a cool concept. I think that is a great thing, and I look forward to use it.
I think it's a great differentiation of the benefits there. An agent that takes control of your computer, your mouse, your keyboards, essentially prevents you from doing anything else. It's a foreground agent. Not only is it risky, like we said, that you can like click things, delete things, that you, oh no. It's also preventing you from actually interacting with the computer, which kind of sucks because then you feel unpowered and you're like just watching. An agent on the background, like what they have with the solution of a encapsulated sandboxed environment that's still Windows. This is a big difference for folks because you can put it in the background, like Wolfram said, and go do stuff. I tried to order some food with Comet yesterday, and then I decided to completely rely on this, and then only ask it to like let me know when I need to like hit send. The agent listens, and then yeah, this week I ate a meal that was fully ordered and decided for me by the AI. It wasn't, you know, fully the best, but it was all right. From a place I never ordered before, like that was great. And I wonder if like most Windows users will actually start using more agentic stuff with this. I also wonder what models are there, but generally it feels like a big step for Windows to like put agentic AI in everybody's hands. Anybody else would use this, folks? I don't know who's here on Windows, but like, what do you think about like agentic AI being built on the system level?
It's got nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
As much as I want to criticize Windows and OneDrive and all of that, we're in a bubble. The majority of the people that's what they're going to use, like more than 2/3 of everybody. So
Google is preparing that for sure because they just released their computer use model, remember? And Apple will have to do something like that as well.
Yeah. And I think the most important thing is this is OS level. And a secure sandbox environment on an OS level, I think it's very important. And also, like Nistan is saying, this is in people's faces. This is literally the default AI for them to use. If you think about this, there's the OS level, and then there's the browser level, and then there's the application level, like ChatGPT. ChatGPT is currently third in the stack. We have the OS level where most people exist. Not many people will keep exploring that upwards. So there's definitely that. Alrighty, we are go to this week's buzz and interview with Kyle Corbitt from OpenPipe, who recently joined Weights and Biases. Let's do this thing, folks. And then we still have some stuff to talk about. We also have another interview afterwards. So please don't go anywhere, and let's go. Alrighty, folks, I am very pleased to welcome to the stage Kyle Corbitt, who does RL at OpenPipe and is the CEO of OpenPipe as well. Kyle, you've been here before, and I remember we chatted with you before, so folks may remember you. But for folks who don't, please, can you give us a little bit of introduction to who you are and what's your background and how are you finding yourself in this world of RL?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm one of the founders of OpenPipe. We do reinforcement learning for LLMs to make agents more reliable. We've been working on this company for the last 2 years. About a month and a half ago, we got acquired by CoreWeave. So now we are with Weights and Biases, get to hang out with the team a lot. Got into this space because it was really cool. So before this, I was at Y Combinator. I actually worked under Sam Altman for part of my time there. And then as I saw just everything that was happening with LLMs in 2022, it just seemed like too cool not to get into. So that's how I ended up here.
So that's like a super speedy intro to you. And then we on ThursdAI a bunch of open source models. For an extended period of time, the covering of open source models also included fine-tuning of those models. So like Yam here, Nistan, and a bunch of other friends of ThursdAI, we are all into looking at the Hugging Face open source leaderboard, if you remember those, and like fine-tuning. And then OpenPipe, you guys offered before RL, this was like a part of the service as well. That's how we talked to you, like I think last time. We saw with the increase of instruct models getting better and better somewhere around Llama 3, it was harder and harder to see like fine-tune outperform the base models. And then we saw kind of a lull in fine-tuning, and now it seems to like picking back up. Could you talk about this for a little bit from how you see this and the offerings that you guys started doing in OpenPipe according to this?
Yes. So there was a lot of buzz around fine-tuning around the sort of Llama 2 era, and then Mistral released some great models that were pretty popular to fine-tune. And then, yeah, it seemed like much less interest in that. I think it really makes sense. And, you know, for the record, all the way through this, I told people, in fact, I gave a talk that was pretty well received at the AI Engineer Conference in 2024 saying you probably should not fine-tune. I think that for a lot of use cases with SFT, it really didn't make sense. It mostly made sense if you had to move to a smaller model anyway, typically for latency reasons. So we see a lot of people doing real-time voice applications where you can just get a much better user experience. If you move to a smaller model, you get far more tokens per second. You can have a much more natural sounding conversation. So that's the one niche where it feels like sort of like traditional SFT style fine-tuning still has a strong place. But for other things, I think like broadly, the reason I see that happening, a couple of things. First of all, the price point on frontier models dropped by several orders of magnitude over the course of about a year. And a big part of the reason why people did do fine tuning was in order to deal with, you know, not have to spend those frontier model very expensive tokens. So that became less of an issue. And then also, yeah, just the quality got much better from those frontier models. So you didn't have to do much task specific work to get good results. And also like fine tuning, the way most people deployed it and the way that kind of our workflow at OpenPipe worked was in this distillation flow. So you would typically the way it would work is you would deploy some big model, you deploy, you know, GPT-4 or 4.0 or something like that in production. You would capture requests and responses and then train a smaller model through distillation to perform similarly. Now, that can get you lower costs, that can get you faster speed. That can't really get you better quality than the model you're distilling from. And it can't give you better performance, can't give you better, you know, reliability. And as a result, as we move into these more agentic things, the real issue people are running into now is that kind of like reliability, right? It's that's the big blocker when we talk to enterprises, when we talk to startups, like, hey, if we don't want a cheaper model, sometimes we want a faster model, but the biggest thing we want is we want a more reliable model. We want a model that can do these longer agentic traces and successfully complete them without getting confused and provide a bad user experience. And SFT can't really get you there, or at least it's much harder to get you there, and we can talk about why. RL can get you there. RL can actually get you more reliability. It can have better performance on your task. And I think that's why we're seeing this resurgence, this interest again, because it's solving a different problem that is one that's really top of mind.
Reinforcement learning for folks who are listening, and part of why I wanted to bring you here is to educate us a little bit as well. A year and a month ago, somewhere there, OpenAI released like the first versions of O1. And like the main thing there was they use RL for verifiable kind of outcomes like math and code specifically, and like train their models continuously on like chain of thoughts to like think for longer and then bring us like different results. And like I think the open source community also started like going into RL. Then we've seen incredible investments in RL from different companies. Grok 4 famously, like half of its training budget was on RL, like unprecedented amount of time spent compared to previous models as well. And then kind of after DeepSeek and GRPO, folks started getting really excited about like RL for smaller models as well. And we've seen, and we talked on the show about multiple very tiny models, like in the 1.5 billion parameter, 3 billion parameter models, that on very specific things that's verifiable with not a lot of training. RL supposedly like reduces the time you have to outperform major models. We saw this with deep research from multiple models. We saw this on a bunch of Quinn fine tunes. Could you talk about why RL achieves those goals and where did it come from suddenly? And then we can talk about the offerings that we are releasing to people.
Yeah, totally. So I guess the first thing I would say is like, I'm a little bit bearish on just like, I think that there's no fundamental reason why RL makes it so that smaller models are better than larger models or something. I think that sort of like the existing scaling laws from before are still mostly true. So I don't think we're going to start seeing this big wave of tiny models that are actually better than big models on general tasks, right? On very, very specific things, yes. And I think even when we're talking to customers, typically we don't try and move them to those very, very small models like you're talking about, the 1.5, 3 billion parameter models. I think our sweet spot is like maybe 14 billion parameter models. And our biggest focus right now at OpenPipe is moving up to larger models. You'll see announcements from us soon on training much larger models, hundreds of billion parameter models, because I think the RL works there just as well. In fact, it works better because those big models are more data efficient because they're already so smart. I think the reason why people are investing so much in this is because it is a way to get better performance out of task-specific RL. The big labs are doing RL on many, many different tasks, and then also just kind of like general purpose reasoning and math. The incredible thing about RL relative to where we were before with just kind of pre-training and then like instruct training is that it lets you get better performance than your training data has, right? So like if you're pre-training data on a model on the whole internet, you're sort of like the upper bound in some ways of how good their model is going to be in practice is kind of like limited by the quality of the text on the internet you're training it on. Whereas when you use RL, you're basically, what you're doing with RL at a very high level is you're saying, hey, here's the question or the context or whatever, the task you're trying to do. Go do whatever you want. You can reason, you can use tools. If there's tools available, you can search the web. Like there's all these different things you can do. You as the model can do whatever you want. And then you just give me back a final answer and I'll tell you if the answer was good or not. And so it can get a lot more creativity and freedom because you're giving it that freedom, right? To do whatever it wants in between. And so it can learn really creative things that were potentially things that weren't even in the training data. It can learn to use those techniques effectively. And so it ends up just giving you much, much better performance than you could get by just pure imitation learning, especially since there isn't probably like a lot of really, really high quality data to imitate on your specific task in most cases.
I think specific task is the name of the game here, as far as I saw. And we saw the RL and thinking models get significant improvements on coding, which is verifiable. You can run the code, see if it works, verify, and then give this result back. And also math. We saw the competition math sky high. Like models are now solving different things because it's verifiable and they've been trained to do those verifications as well. On general tasks, it doesn't seem like that's a big step function improvement. Scale still works there, like you said. All right, Kyle, lightning round. I want to ask a few more questions. When should folks think about RL fine-tuning versus just prompt engineering, for example? Because both can make my model or agent do what I want. Do you have a gut sense to tell our folks about when to use it?
So I always say take prompt engineering as far as you can first. It's worth spending significant effort on that and getting to the best performance you can. Make sure you're giving your model the right tools. Make sure you're giving it the right instructions. Do as much as you can there. If you've done as much as you can and you're sort of hitting a limit, it's like, hey, my agent is doing what I want 80% of the time, and then there's like these 20% of the cases where it's not. That's where I think it makes sense to bring in RL and you can get that last 20% of the performance.
Next question is, currently, in October 16th, 2025, which is the best open model to use for fine-tuning?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one that there's the most kind of ecosystem familiarity with is the Quinn 3 family. That's where it's sort of like the kind of standard in kind of the academic, just like, yeah, kind of like RL ecosystem.
Yeah. Okay, and last question that will take us to the next segment and probably the last segment of what we're here to announce. If I am new to RL or newish and I don't have infrastructure, is there an offering for OpenPipe?
Oh, what a great...
So what is the now? We talked about serverless RL last time, but like I would love to hear from you. What did we launch last week? What did you guys launch last week? It took us around a month from the point that you integrated into CoreWeave to actually launch this. Talk to us and walk us through serverless RL, why we built it, what is the thoughts behind this, and what it actually does for folks.
Yeah, absolutely. So very happy to talk about that. One thing I want to say is, like, at OpenPipe, we don't want to launch something just because we can. Like, we want to launch something because it's actually solving a real problem. I feel very deeply about that. And so we've been doing RL for like the last year. I'm excited about serverless RL, which I'll talk about, because for me as a researcher, as just an individual trying to use this makes my life so much easier. And I'm hopeful that that'll be the case for other folks as well. Basically what it is it's a way, so when you're running RL, you don't have to manage any of the backend, any of the infrastructure, any of the servers, GPUs. So you write it looks like Alex has got our blog post announcing it up here. I won't go into the technical details because people are at different levels. You can read the post, but the upshot is you end up with faster runs, you end up with cheaper runs, you end up not having to provision GPUs. This graph, I think, is probably the coolest thing in my mind, where when you're running, because when you're doing these jobs, it's not like you get it all set up and you run it once and it works. I mean, there's always going to be, unfortunately, iteration. And so that cycle time is super important to getting good results. Traditionally, if you're managing your own GPUs and starting everything up that way, you might take like a couple of minutes every time you start a run to get the weights in memory and everything, and then you notice something's wrong, you change it. With serverless RL, since all that's happening on a remote computer, you are just editing your very lightweight Python file that's defining your reward function, your tools, things like that. And so it just takes a couple seconds to start up and you can be off to the races.
The thing that I didn't understand, would love for you to explain it to me just a little bit, is that RL has basically two steps in there. Like you talked about this a little bit. There's the concept of rollouts and there's the concept of like the training stuff as well. So you need kind of both the training loop and the inference loop. Could you just like speak just a little bit about how they intertwine? Like what's the process there?
Fundamentally, the way RL works is, let's say you're training an agent, like let's say you're training a deep research agent. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your deep research agent go off and research 100 different questions or something like that. It comes back to the final answer. And then you're going to take all those final answers and you're going to have to grade them some way and say, okay, for each of these answers, was this good or bad or kind of somewhere in the middle? And then once you've done that, you've got that batch together of answers from your model, their grades, then you're going to use that to train and update your model and make it so your model is slightly more likely to produce the answers that were good and slightly less likely to produce the answers that were bad. That's at an extremely high level, kind of like how this loop works.
Yeah.
So you can see there's kind of two phases here. There's the part where you're actually using your model to, in this case, run all those deep research tasks. And then there's the second part where you're training those trajectories, we call them, from your model, like the agent run and the scores we gave it, or rewards, which is what we call it, to update the model weights. So you're kind of bouncing back and forth between these two phases all the time as you're doing an RL run.
So you have to have them very reliable as well. For many standard RL practices on one machine, you have to remove the weight, upload them for inference, and then the training loop, and then do some stuff.
Yeah, so you're using like VLM or SGLang or something like that. And then for training, you're using Megatron or FSDP, but they're kind of like different tools. And so yes, you end up having to kind of like, all right, we're going to turn off our inference stack and remove the weights there and then turn it on for training. Or you can be doing it with different sets of GPUs, but then you generally get pretty low utilization because it's hard to have both of them. It's very messy.
Would love to hear from you about that thing that allows multiple folks running their own custom things on kind of the same base model.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not entirely new. This is something that has existed in BLM and other inference servers for a while, but basically it lets you, it's based on this paper called Punica from late 2023 that did some really excellent kind of CUDA kernel engineering. But basically what it lets you do is if you have a bunch of different LoRa's, and LoRa's are just, it stands for low rate adapter. It's kind of like the way of customizing a model without changing all the parameters, just changing like a very small defined subset of it. If you train your models in this way, you can actually at inference time still batch together inference requests from different requests that are using different LoRa's, and it can all be run efficiently in the same batch as if they were all running against the same model. So that's how you get the inference wins. The big criticism or complaint people have about LoRa's traditionally is that since you're only adjusting a very small number of weights, you may not get the same performance from your model or the ability to push it as far as you could if you were adjusting all the weights in the model. There was a really excellent blog post, which we can put in the show notes later, from Thinking Machines about a month ago at this point, where they did some. There was actually a really good one a couple of years ago as well. The Thinking Machines post about LoRa's, they did a lot of ablations, they spent thousands of GPU hours running all these different things, and basically showed when you're doing RL at least, there's zero discernible difference in training all the parameters versus training a LoRa. This is something we've been doing for a long time, frankly, at OpenPipe, and that's been our experience as well. But I think that just gives us like a lot more ammunition to when people have this objection to say, well,
yeah, we've talked about this blog post a little bit here. WNB inference did not have LoRa fine tuning. Now you guys come in, and hopefully we'll also release this separately. But at least for now, you guys can use the whole stack of CoreWeave powered inference service with weights and biases, and you can also use those traces and rollouts to see them in Weave, the tracing and evaluation software that I talk to you about all the time on the stage, to train with OpenPipe. So I think that the highlight here is, first of all, me and Kyle are co-workers. The speed with which you guys implemented this once you came into Core was incredible, like less than a month, I think, till the final rollout, while onboarding, while doing so, like tons of stuff. So shout out to the whole OpenPipe team. It's quite incredible. And we are now generally at CoreWeave are offering a significant kind of like full coverage of use cases with AI that are now possible. Some of them are powered by the core GPUs. Some of them are just offerings from us. WNB models is still used for training some of the stuff. So like in the early inference, you would see this in the WNB like interface standard. And then the rollouts will be tracked with Weave, which is specifically built for seeing exactly like how agent behaves in multiple steps, etc., and tracking like etc. And then the loop is powered by core GPUs. I think the last thing that we didn't mention, we definitely should mention, Art and Ruler, Kyle, before we drop off. How's Art, which is your open source library that you guys released, and Ruler plug into all of this and power?
So Art, you can just search OpenPipe Art, it'll come up. Yeah, it's a very popular library for running reinforcement learning. It does work with the serverless backend I was just talking, or serverless RL stack I was just talking about. It also works on your own GPUs. It's fully open source. You can just use it for your own RL in either environment. It just makes RL way easier to use, right? This stuff is all finicky. There's a lot to get right. And we have a bunch of heuristics that make it so it's easier for practitioners, which is really our North Star. Like we want to make this stuff really easy. It isn't that easy right now, and we're solving for that problem. And then Alex also mentioned Ruler, which is something that's very cool. So Ruler is basically like an automated LLMS judge. We do a bunch of work to make LLMS judge work really, really well for RL. And in practice, this works phenomenally well, surprisingly well, where because a big part before we released this, a very hard part in doing RL was getting that reward function, which I've sort of glossed over up to this point. But actually, it can be hard, right? If you've got a bunch of traces from your agent, say, hey, which of these are good and bad? Ruler is a way of solving that problem in a very generalized automated way. We tried it on a bunch of different tasks internally and on customer tasks. It works really well. So that's why we released it. And that's fully open source. If you just search OpenPipe Ruler, you'll see that as well.
So as folks heard, we're bringing you pretty much all of the pieces of the stack that you need together in one service. And yes, definitely you can try this. One last shout out to the team is that this week we also released a new model, Quinn 3 14B from OpenPipe. This is a fine-tune for Quinn 3 that does not do the thinking, which is helpful for RL and fine-tuning purposes specifically. So not only does the OpenPipe team release products, they also now release models on an inference server. So definitely folks can check this out. Kyle, thank you so much for coming. I'm very, very excited about the offering that we now have. I had a chance during our hackathon to actually see people interact with this and give a bunch of feedback. Folks definitely should go check out Serverless.io. We have a great notebook for you to run this, and then give us feedback. Send it to me, send it to Kyle. We'll definitely be listening to more, as RL is very important. We have to move on, but Kyle, any last shout outs to the team or anything that you want to say while, ending the...
Yeah, this has been great, and it's been really fun working together.
All righty, Kyle, thank you so much. Always welcome, by the way, to the show as well. Folks, Kyle, if you don't know, one of the top folks in RL that talks about it openly, definitely go check out his talk from before, and then we'll bring you more RL news from CoreWeave. Thank you, Kyle. Cheers. Folks, as this interview ends, we have a new person here on the roster. It's Quinn Slack from AMP. You may know AMP from another person that's not with us. Obviously, Ryan, our often co-host, is recently started working in AMP and like hyping AMP up. Quinn, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome. The thing that we talked about, like folks here know about AMP specifically, would love to hear about your new release. Like it made quite a lot of waves, at least on my feeds. Could you briefly give us a summary of what is going on with AMP recently?
Yeah, we made AMP, and for the last 6 months, it's on the frontier of being the very best, using the best models, unconstrained. And we learned so much. We were able to build something that's awesome. And we saw all these new models coming out, so many new models. There's really great cheap tokens. So we made AMP free. There's a new free mode, and the other one is the smart mode. Yeah, people love it. I think I'm probably going to use the smart mode like 80% of the time myself, and that's okay. Different people have different mixes, but this new free mode means that agentic coding is now accessible to everyone, and we can all get to explore what you can do when you're not feeling like that something is ticking, your wallet down in the background. And the way we did it is with ads, the oldest business model on the internet. So crazy idea, but it's been received a lot better than we thought, frankly.
Ryan reached out to me like, hey, something big is coming. And then when you guys released it yesterday and you hopped on live stream, Ryan was like, hey, this is the. And I looked at it like, ads really? And then I had time to think about this. And I'm like, I'm looking at my like AI bill generally from OpenAI, is $200 to Cursor, to Windsor, to like all of these things. And this stacks up. And like, I'm pretty sure that folks want to get into this are not there. And you know what? I don't mind watching ads, especially if they're contextual. Like I recently get to a realization that like Instagram ads are net value add to me. Like sometimes they are targeted so much that like, oh, I actually didn't know this thing exists and I do need to buy this. And then I looked at some of your ads and they're like AI engineering ads, like base 10 and Axiom and like whatever. So I did like, I had the whole thing where like EO ads, like, oh, it's actually not that idea from the beginning of the day to the end of the day.
Yeah, I think everyone's going through that. And there's so many people that they're paying for so many subscriptions now, and they're not sure if they fill it out or if one subscription is good, then they hit the max and people are managing that. So, part of it is I'm so excited about making it so that people that cannot afford this now have access to agentic coding, but also even if you can, it's so much easier if something is free, like with Google. Google is free and it's the default. It's achieved that kind of status. And it turns out with AI, if you fast forward a few years, all the data centers people are building out, all this scale, that is what is going to drive down tokens. And everyone is betting on tokens eventually becoming too cheap to meter. So we're starting to build the product that can kind of assume that, which is cool. But, it's definitely everyone is looking toward a future, a few years from now. And the numbers do not work out right now. But we've seen this incredible surge of advertisers that are interested because we're the first ones to do an ad-supported model like this, which is kind of crazy, kind of funny that it arrives in the CLI in an agentic coding tool first, right?
Last thing that I want to ask you, Quinn, is like, how's the performance on the free tier? What models are getting into there? What people can expect? Because I know for a fact we're here on ThursdAI. We're reporting on the latest and greatest model. We talked about Haiku for 4.5, etc. What models will people be able to expect on the free tier of AMP?
It's going to be a rotating mix. On the other side, we're going to all the model providers and saying, who's got excess capacity, who's got a new model in training, or who can just give us a discount because they want to be a part of this. Maybe they want to show their ads on it. And so the whole other side of this business is us going around and hustling for tokens. So we're not going to switch which model is being used in thread, like while you're coding a specific task as much as we can. But one day it might be XAI's Grok Code Fast, which is an amazing model. The next day it might be Kimi K2 on Grok. It's going to switch a lot. So you can expect to try a lot. And in some cases, we actually will not be able to show you what model is being used.
Yeah, the variability is very interesting. Quinn, thank you so much for hopping on and giving us a little bit of the energy that led to this like crazy potential release. All right, Quinn, thank you so much for joining us, folks. We're almost at time. Inviting back folks on stage here to chime in to basically went back-to-back interviews, reaction time for some of the interviews. Would love to hear about RL as well. Also the free code. Let's just have like a little free conversation while I shut up a little bit.
They all offer the free one. Anthropic doesn't, but Quinn and Google do with their tools. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting way for a company to go. I'm pretty sure for some of the open source repos, I wouldn't really care that info goes out, but it does make me a bit nervous that there is a chance I might make a mistake and then just push the whole code base towards ads. It will be interesting to see how that works.
Yeah, I want to see.
I'm more interested in like what open models AMP is using, because I thought it was just Sonnet. That's what I want to know.
Did I understand correctly that they can switch it at any time?
Yeah, it looks like every request is getting switched.
I use AMP, by the way. Whenever I finally do need something done on the code base, you just like foot the bill with that and get AMP to finally fix it.
First, about skills. From what I see, I must say that the implementation is quite weird. There are folders that hold the skill. Inside the folders, there are MD files that, from what I see, they are like conditional statements. Like, if you need to do this, follow this MD file. Like, if you need to extract text from a PDF, here is another MD file that will tell you how to do that. Or if you need to create a PDF, from text. I'm just saying, let's say that the skill is PDF, something. Then you have another MD file that explains how to do that. And also you have some data sources, which is kind of weird, some pre-made Python code that the agent can use. But I get the idea because you learn a skill and you want to not re-implement the skill.
From my point of view, because I've been creating skills a while before, when I have something like how to take a screenshot, Claude Code on my system knew how to take screenshots using command line tools, how to save them, where to put them, and all this stuff. So I put that in the Claude MD file. And the more skills, I call them that now, the more skills I added, the bigger the file got, and I don't need to have all that in context all the time. So taking them out like subroutines and putting them as modules in a different file, that makes sense. And I wouldn't want to write an MCP server just for such basic functions. So I think it makes sense.
I think that if you can generate skills automatically, like take a log or a chat or I don't know, a CLI log of you running, just casually doing your thing, and then extract reproducible skills from that automatically, like with Claude Code, some sort of I don't know, maybe a mode of Claude Code.
They have a skill builder thing. That's what I used, but it's only in the UI. I think they have exactly that. They have a skill builder skill.
All righty, folks, breaking news from Cognition. And we have Swyx here, who recently joined Cognition. He's on the blog of this release of SWE-grep. What did you guys release? What is this about? We showed the demo, but like we'd love to hear more.
Oh, did you do the playground?
We did the playground.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think. Sorry, I should have given you guys a heads up. We only decided that today was the launch date like 12 hours ago. So I guess it was a big sprint. So we're launching two models. We're announcing two models and launching it as a feature inside of Windsurf. You can't really use the models as an API, mostly because it's very, very tuned in terms of the tool calls to Windsurf right now. We hope to generalize it in future, but that's future work. So the two models are SWE-grep and SWE-grep Mini. They're basically like RL-tuned models for rapid agentic searches, which is what we call it. And so we have here the Cognition code search eval, where there's like the internal benchmarks of code retrieval, and basically showing like you have the frontier models like Sonnet 4.5 or GPT-5 or what have you. And basically we would be able to match those performance numbers, but do it something like 3 to 4 times faster. The idea is that it's sort of like an IDE situation. You kind of need to keep people in flow. Speed is actually very, very important. And so like training fast, small models is very good. I think there's the number one question that I had, and like most people have when seeing this thing, is like, okay, what are the sources of speed? One is, yes, it's a smaller model. Two, it is hosted on Cerebrus. I think that is, if you see the first image with the tokens per second thing, the SWE-grep Mini goes up to 2,800 tokens per second, which is pretty crazy.
Oh.
The last one actually I think is the most interesting, which is natively parallel tool calling. So the RL tuning was trained for multi-turn and natively parallel up to 8 parallel tool calls at once. And I think like this is like the core insight that made me go aha. Like if you look in the blog post, I have an Excel draw chart. The shitty drawn charts are mine, and then the nice charts are everyone else. Yeah, that one. Yeah. So
this is you?
Average parallelism of most models is like 1, 1.2, 1.5, right? We observed that like the newer models like Sonnet can do a lot more parallelism, but SWE-grep starts at like 6 and goes up to 8. The more parallelism you have, the more you can like sort of mass search a code base, and actually it's very good custom model for a sub agent. And I think like that's something that we're pretty excited about it in terms of exploring as an area of research. Cognition has been famous for saying don't build multi-agents, but sub-agents as a tool seems relatively underrated. So I'll stop there, but that's the main framing.
That's very exciting. We saw the playground, we compared it. One thing that I'm trying to figure out is, because the comparison is between like Sonnet 4.5 and then SWE-grep or SWE-grep Mini plus Sonnet 4.5. So is it just the speed up is just in the context building stage and then the token stream from Sonnet 4.5?
Correct. So you can choose whatever main model you want. There was one piece of messaging that we had in the blog, but we actually dropped it because it was getting too long. It's basically like, what is the fundamental equation of coding agents, right? First, you have to find the right files. You have to read the right files, and then you have to generate the edits for the right files. That's it. Read and write, right? This solution is focusing on reading. We found in most agent queries across Devin and Windsurf is about more than 60 to 70% of the complex queries that we find. And so what if we could speed that up by 3 to 5x? Like that's a no-brainer. And it's like reading is a very fundamental thing. If you can make it cheap to read, you can actually get human input because humans stick around faster. So it is focusing on code-based understanding. There's about 2 more launches that we have that are following up from SWE-grep that we're doing. The next one I'm pretty excited about. It's already being teased. It's called Code Maps. You can try it. You can find it in Windsurf if you just look for it. But yeah, this is only focused on agentic retrieval of code bases for coding agents. And the next one is for humans as well.
Is this a result of joining Cognition and kind of the power up of 2 teams? Would you say that like some of this research is like Cognition coded versus like Windsurf coded, or is this something that Windsurf had on its roadmap before and like could have delivered before?
No, I think this is net new. Yeah, this is where part of the thesis or the due diligence of Cognition and buying Windsurf was that they were like, okay, what can we do if we took over this code base? So this is the first of what is being planned, and we'll see more. You know, like the tab model is being worked on, Code Maps is being worked on, and more models coming.
We just had Quinn Slack from AMP on here talking about their free offering.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
ads coming to Windsurf at any time?
No plans for ads. Windsurf has a good tier. I think ads is actually very useful. I think it's one of the best, most interesting ideas in coding agents I've seen in a while. Honestly, I think you can even get more fun and ridiculous by like injecting like, here's my favorite UI library of the day, like sponsored by whatever, brought to you by Radix UI.
Yeah, which just to call out specifically something they don't do. They like
don't
the
do.
ads currently
They just show up in the pop-up. Yeah,
they just show up. They don't interfere with like the responses.
Yeah, but you know, it can be fun. Like do it for Halloween. Anyway, I think it's a very good direction, right? But it is still not a huge business in the enterprise because they're not going to want ads at work. And I think that's where Cognition is still more focused in terms of enterprise stuff. I think the goal is the analysis that I wrote about when I joined Cognition was a lot of coding agents start at $20 a month, and then they have margin issues, and then you have to rug pull, or you have to fuck with the context or whatever. Devin started at 500 and then goes up from there. There is a self-serve thing, but honestly, the real thing that has PMF is enterprise. You don't mess with ads when you do that. You just build a very, very good enterprise business that's positive margin, and you end up like winning there. So I think the thing about ads is it has to be very, very B2C in the scale of Google to work. And I don't know how like the sort of B2 developer side will work. But I mean, I think it's a good experiment. I'm excited to see them do this.
Yeah, I changed my tune on the ads in the beginning. I was like, ew, ads. And then I was like, oh, it's actually
it's
not
fun.
a bad idea.
They have taste, you know, Quinn and they have taste.
Yeah. Taste, and also I'd like definitely put a Weave ad in there. Like it makes like perfectly targeted sense.
I mean, so there's a spectrum of like, I think all the coding agent companies, there are a lot, you know, AI Code, we're going to feature like all of them. I think the free is not the valuable property as far
as sorry, AI Code, what's that? What is that?
So my next AI engineer is in New York again, focused on coding agents for the first time. Obviously, I'm interested, but I think this year has been a year of coding agents for sure. Can you believe that Claude Code launched this year?
I still can't believe that reasoning as a concept came a year and a month ago in one preview. So yes, we're moving very fast. So AI Code in New York, folks, definitely check out tickets.
I wasn't technically going to plug that, but anyway, like you can own Terminal Bench, you can own like free. I think where Cognition is moving towards is, which is I put at the end of the blog post, is fast. And I think that's a very interesting dimension that hasn't been explored.
Yep. Sounds great. Well, Swyx, now that you're in Cognition, but even before, feel free to come up and talk to us about some of your experiences and also the learnings that you have in these labs. AI Code is coming in November. We're actually a proud sponsor, so folks will see us there as well. Definitely worth coming to. Thank you so much for jumping on last second, for getting some breaking news and give us the update yourself. Folks, as we close out on ThursdAI for October 16th, I don't remember an episode where we had 4 different interviews. I think 4 is our like maximum, and 2 of them are like impromptu. We had Swyx here, we had Quinn Slack from AMP, we had Kyle Corbitt from OpenPipe, and at the beginning we talked with Jessica Gallegos, Senior Product Manager for Google DeepMind. This is achieving TBPN level interview stacks in one stream, so that's great. And we are all looking forward to getting the 3rd version of the Big G at some point with this. Thank you all so much for joining. There's a lot that has happened this week. If you missed any part of the show, ThursdAI is always getting turned into a newsletter and a podcast at the end of this. Everywhere where you get your podcasts, we're available. The amount of stuff we have from week to week is incredible as well. So definitely feel free to subscribe and share with your friends as well. And with that, we'll see you next week, folks. Bye-bye, everyone. Cheers.